Hi everyone, James Egersdorff here, previewing game week 29 of the Fantasy Premier League. Game week 28 is just behind us. It was a bit of an unusual one this week with it being played out on Thursday. It feels like that game week's been going on forever. It doesn't give us tons of time to turn around our teams ready for the weekend, so we've only got a day to prep and get all the information we need from the press conferences and things. So there's quite a lot of themes that I've asked people to reach out to me on this week. I've asked people to reach out on Twitter and send me their questions about some of the challenges they have. So I'm going to talk about that a bit later on. I'm going to talk about an issue affecting everybody if you live in the UK right now, and this is this really bad snow that we're having currently that could impact the games this weekend. I'm going to talk about what to do with some of your more expensive assets at the minute that might not be returning points for you. We touched upon it last week a little bit, but I'm going to drill down on that a bit deeper and of course talk about captain options. So firstly on the weather, those of you who've played FPL long enough will probably remember the last really bad snow that we had that impacted the Premier League. It was probably getting on for 10 years ago now, and I remember one round of weekends on a Saturday where the fixtures just fell gradually one by one to postponements, and it left a really short game week. So my advice on making your transfer this week, I would hold as late as you can until the deadline. There's every chance there might be a game or two that is postponed, and it may be really valuable for you to have that transfer. As it stands, I think the weather looks like it's getting a bit better, so on the basis that the Arsenal game went ahead last night, hopefully we can get a full complement of fixtures, but definitely don't risk making your move too early and sit on your transfer as long as you can. What do we do with expensive assets currently? So this is people like Raheem Sterling is a good example. So he's not in the team, he's an injury risk, he's not played in the last match yesterday. It all comes down to two things for me. It depends on the value that you have tied up in them. So for example, if you bought them for 8 and they're now worth 9 million, you'd sell them for 8.5 and straight away you've lost £500,000. So that's quite a lot of money at any stage of the season, more importantly towards the end, perhaps when you're going to use your wild card in a couple of weeks. So the question you then have to ask, if you're happy to write that money off, insofar as you've made the 0.5 profit, but you don't want them back. So if you definitely don't want them back, so if you sell Sterling and you didn't want him back in a couple of weeks, you're not going to lose money, you're going to make 0.5 because you're not going to have to pay 9 for him when you already had him in your team at 8, if that makes sense. So that's what you've got to ask yourself, how vital is it that you might want to get them back down the line? Same applies to people like Alonso right now. Yes, he's got a tough fixture, yes, his form isn't great. If you looked at that Man United game last week, had Morata not hit the crossbar, he'd have had an assist, so he's still playing quite well, I think. On to the Q&A, so there's quite a few interesting things to chat about here. So Paul Murphy has reached out and he wants to know who, in my opinion, are the big hitters potentially for game week 31, apart from the obvious Liverpool players. So I think if you look at the fixtures, I think you've got to be looking at Bournemouth, you've got to be looking at Huddersfield, and you've got to be looking at Stoke. So I'm working on the assumption here that West Brom, Everton and Palace, who are all off form and all playing away that weekend, aren't going to do so well. I'm also working on the assumption Watford aren't going to do so well at Anfield. So there's 3 players that I've pulled out. If you don't have them on your radar, I think you need to. Shaqiri is one player. He's a player that personally I don't like as an FPL option because he's got a horrific track record with injury, but I can't argue about the guy's form at the minute, and if he carries that on, he looks like he's the guy that could single-handedly keep Stoke in the Premier League, so he's a pretty obvious one. I think one from Huddersfield is Mounier, playing up front, started the season really well and fell away a little, but he's back in the team now and scoring goals. Likewise, if you need a midfielder, there's a guy that they signed in the January window, a chap called Pritchard. He's around the 5.5 mark and he's really making them tick right now and really playing well. He could be an option if you need a cheap midfielder. Bournemouth, there's a forgotten man from last season who's crept back into the team and he played last week. He's been injured. Josh King is back in business, so he could be a really good alternative. A lot of managers have Wilson. I'm a bit unsure over Wilson because of the return of Defoe, who likewise may emerge as a good option for as a big hitter in game week 31. But I'd have a look at Josh King over the next couple of weeks and see how he looks. Is he returning to form? Michael Philander. He reached out, he wants to know, should he go for Virgil van Dijk or Robertson from Liverpool? I think simply here, Van Dijk if you're looking for something nailed on. Robertson's a question mark of his game time with the Moreno thing. I think he does look pretty nailed on at the minute, and I do really like this guy. He gets forward a lot, lots of crosses, lots of attacking play. So if you're willing to take that risk of him being in the team, and of course no player is guaranteed a place in any lineup, I think he could be worth a punt. Sindre Hangeland, I don't know if that's Brader's relative, but he wrote to me asking who to bring in for Deulofeu. I think that's quite a tricky one, because if you think about the options that you're going to be looking at here, you're going to need players that are from, ideally, the teams in game week 31. So might you look at an Oxlade-Chamberlain? Not sure, because he's not nailed on for the game time. I think you've got Shaqiri is probably the best option for that one there. Or, I mean, would you look at some of the Bournemouth midfielders, Fraser and people like that? Again, I don't think they're nailed on. Stanislav's track record with injury is pretty bad. Maybe you'd want to keep a lookout for Zaha if he comes back from injury. I think he might be a week or so away though. Could be a good differential, and he's going to probably have that Shaqiri factor at Palace, in that they've got to have him firing to stay up. That's certainly not an easy dilemma right now. Probably Shaqiri the safest move. A really good question here from Alejandro Welsh, who asked me about Karius, the Liverpool goalie, and I'm really interested in this question because it was a move that I'd actually looked at doing myself to try and free up some money. Since Klopp has come out and said that this guy is nailed on as the number one, while still a little shaky, his performances have improved gradually, and he looks a bit more confident to me. He's available at quite a good price. I think he's about 4.8. And if you're confident that Mignolet is not going to get back in, I think this guy could be a good option. So sounds a bit of a left field one, but that's a good idea you've had there, Alejandro. So have a look at that. That's a good one. John Rowe has been in touch. He wants to know about Spurs players. Should he be bringing in Eriksen and Son? I think the short-term answer is yes. I mean, Spurs have got two really good fixtures, starting with the Huddersfield one this weekend before they have the blank. There's two caveats to it to me. They've got the Juventus game midweek, and will that impact the game time if, say, they go 2 or 3 goals ahead after an hour, for example, on Saturday? And secondly, you need an exit strategy. So let's say you're going to get in Eriksen. Have you got a plan to maybe move on to Mane or Shaqiri, one of the players that do have a game in game week 31? So yes on Spurs players, but have an exit strategy, have a plan to move them out and use the money perhaps to redistribute in your squad. Finally, captains this week. It's a 2-horse race for me. Salah, absolutely on fire. He's at home to Newcastle, and our good friend Harry Kane. He's playing a Huddersfield team at Wembley. Spurs are playing pretty good. He didn't play midweek. He was rested for the cup game. Small challenge for Spurs here is this Juventus tie midweek, and also Huddersfield aren't a great team, but they have won the last 2 out of 2, so a little bit of form for those guys there. So for me, Salah edges it. You get an extra point if he scores. They're pretty much neck and neck in the Golden Boot race. I think Kane's one ahead, but they're both going for it. He has the advantage of probably not having a very strenuous Champions League game midweek. Probably he'll at worst have to play the last half an hour if by some miracle Porto score 3 or 4 without reply. So for me, I think Salah this week over Kane. So I hope that's been valuable. Thank you as ever for all your support. Stay warm in this cold weather. Keep your eye on those postponements. Keep subscribing, commenting and reaching out on Twitter. Have a great game week. Cheers.